Hey, I'm Dave. Welcome to Shop Talk. Today in Shop Talk, we're going to talk about Microsoft's latest foray into the open source space, and then we'll take viewer questions after that when we're joined with my co-host, Glen. So Microsoft has open sourced two major pieces that are probably of interest to you. One is WSL2, the Windows subsystem for Linux, and the other is the Visual Studio Code Copilot plugin mechanism and the whole Copilot plugin, as far as I'm aware. The later one is probably more interesting to most people because, especially to people like OpenAI, who just paid $3 billion for a company that is predicated on building an extension to VS Code in a proprietary fashion, that now and three guys on an airplane ride home can, whip something together that looks something like it. So that's going to kind of upset that industry, but it will be very good for the long-term health of the industry, I think, because instead of having companies add value by everybody duplicating all the code required to build a plugin in Visual Studio Code to do code integration at the AI level, and I'll explain that in a bit. Now they'll have to add value on the AI side and on the code suggestion and generation side because everybody else will have access to the same plumbing. So what's happening right now is if you want to build something like Copilot or like Cursor, then you've got to do a huge amount of infrastructure work in Visual Studio Code itself, which is not bad because it's open source, but everybody's doing the same work. And so Microsoft decided, well, just take our work because we've already done it at least once and you can run with it from there. So that's really opened up a lot of opportunities for people to come in and you can be Cursor overnight if you want to, almost. The other part of it, WSL2 is the Windows subsystem for Linux. And I think the real key value there is that with it being open source, now the entire chain from the NT subsystem level all the way down into Linux itself is open source and can be worked on by anybody. And so that's going to speed adoption. It's going to increase the rate at which that subsystem evolves and improves and so on. And I think that can only be great for Windows users and for Linux users because I think the best way to use Linux is in the WSL2 subsystem. I guess, Glenn, you've tried it at least recently. Did you ever get a desktop working or just some GUI apps?
No, well, I didn't play around with it too much. I did get the terminal version of working. Then there's a couple GUI apps in there that work. I haven't done the full desktop install yet with a real sort of full interface, but that's the next step. So okay, I haven't had a chance to play around with it too much.
I'm still not sure if that's possible. I'd like to find out, can you install a full desktop environment under WSL2 and run a desktop under a desktop? And where does that desktop go? Is it just float around in a window? And if you know in the comments, please let me know. And speaking of comments, we had something like 17,000 comments in the last 2 weeks. So you guys really put us to the test when it came to filtering through these, looking for good questions and so on. No shortage of things to pick from. But before we get to the questions, though, one other random anecdote is that if you saw a very niche episode I made maybe a year or two ago called Building a Twin Turbo ZZ502. So I built a 1,200 horsepower engine with not junkyard parts, some junkyard parts and some Chinese eBay turbos and manifolds, blow off valves, wastegates, stuff like that. Took it to my friend's Jim, who had a dyno in his shop at the time, and we ran it. And it ran at a fuel pressure, so we couldn't go any further at 1,200 horsepower. It's one of those terrible stories. Well, it would have made 1,500 horsepower except for A, B, and C. Well, A, B, and C happened, and I didn't make 1,500 horsepower. I only made 12. Anyway, I've had this motor sitting in the corner of my shop ever since. And I guess it's more like 3 years now because Jim's been dead for at least 2. And my nephew, who's 17, I believe, or just turned 18, he's got a 81 Camaro. And so this motor would be the holy grail to him, not with the turbos, just as a big block. So I decided I'm going to ship this motor as a gift to my nephew. And I thought, how much could that cost me?
How much could that possibly cost?
How much could it possibly cost me? First of all, he's in Canada and I'm in the US. And so I've got to ship it across the border. Shipping freight across the border end to end is not easy. It's even less easy when you need a lift gate at the point of pickup and a lift gate at delivery, and you can't manage the freight in between, and you need a broker. And it's just a whole rodeo of circumstances you have to go through to ship something heavy across the border like that. So I decided, well, I'm going to call FedEx because they've got FedEx Freight. They handle all this logistics and everything else. They've got pickups. They got the liftgate trucks. They can get it to your doorstep. It's what I need. But the computers are down at the time I called to book it. And my brother's standing here and I don't want to lose the day. So I'm like, well, let's just book a pickup and we'll figure it out later. He's like, are you sure? Because it could be really expensive. And I'm like, well, what do you say my options are? And he says, well, I can give you a 40% first-time customer discount. And I'm feeling two things at this point. I'm feeling, well, I'm pretty blessed to get this 40% discount. But at the same time, how inflated are your prices that anytime somebody phones, you can just give 40% off? But we'll find out shortly because I got the bill today. And the original price would have been $6,000, but I got my 40% off, which is like $2,400. So it wound up, after all taxes and everything, $3,600 ballpark, which is a wild amount to ship an engine. But it is, in exchange for great service. I had done the freight quotes where you go online and give me your lowest bid to ship a 650 pound lump from here to there. And I think they were coming in around $1,500. So it's twice that at least. But, it did go, went painless, and they picked it up, had all the right stuff, dropped it off. It did get hung up in customs for a couple of days because I was listed as the importer, and I'm both Canadian and American, but I'm not a Canadian resident. And so there was some paperwork issues there. But other than that, they went pretty smooth. So
Thank goodness for that discount. Holy man.
Oh, yeah. That helped a lot, though.
That's pretty good. 40% right off the top without even asking.
He could have at least said, let me call my manager. I'll see what I can do.
Yeah, he could have played the game a little. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a lovely looking jacket you got on there, Dave. Pretty formal today.
I am. I thought we agreed we're going to class this joint up a little bit.
One of us agreed, apparently, or one of us didn't get the memo. It looks a lot like another jacket you have, but that's a whole other story.
That is.
Yeah, we had, a couple things. You did a couple episodes on some Windows stuff. And those tend to get some attention, especially this Windows 10 ending and wow. And then last week we took a week off from doing this because you had some other engagements. And the combination of that meant, holy cow, we've got like 3 episodes from Dave's Garage, one from Shop Talk, and one had 11,000 questions or something. Or 11,000 comments, 700 and some questions. So I've done 2 things today. I don't pay for any of my ChatGPT or Grok. So when I get it, look at some of the questions and filter it, I have to send it as an attachment. And you can only kind of do that once. And then it says like pay up or wait another 24 hours. So one set of questions is sorted by ChatGPT. And another group of questions from a couple of them is sorted by Grok, and we're just going to kind of wing it and walk through them. But we're going to start with the Windows 10 is dead stuff. And usually I put them in a bit of order and sort them out. We're raw dogging it, I guess, is that the bad term, right term? So let's go. So we got a few folks here, Monki, Bifau, Czerp, and Oleasandro. All had a question along the lines of, why did Microsoft promise Windows 10 would be the last version only to release Windows 11?
Yeah, I don't know that they promised. I haven't found the exact quote. I think the guy did say that this would be like the last version of Windows that you'll need or something weird like that. Or even if they did say that, it's not. They're going to keep, I don't know why they decided to renumber it. Does it bother you that it's Windows 11 versus Windows 10 2025 edition? I don't think, or it should just be Windows 2025 and they should just name it annually like they do cars.
Yeah. Was it the last version you'd have to buy?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. You can't just have Windows 10 forever. Yeah.
Well, you could, but does it make a difference what you call it? I mean, it's not like it's going to be the same version forever.
Oh, I think I know why they did it, because they wanted people to have questions and to be able to
engagement.
Yeah, it's engagement. That's what it is. It's all. Yeah. Glen Eric 1, CF Finch, and Karenex. What happens if I stay on Windows 10 after support ends? How risky is it really?
If there is a major exploit found in Windows 10, then it would be pretty risky, I think. So you'd have to watch the news. And our odds are that if somebody came out with just a horrible backdoor exploit into, or not backdoor, but an exploit into Windows, and it was, 3 months after they had said we're not going to do support, they're probably going to fix the big ones. But even so, because they fixed one big one in XP long after XP was done. But you don't want to be dependent on that, especially because the consequences of them not fixing it and you continuing to use it can be pretty serious. So
I think I saw one comment or a couple, maybe someone saying, well, but if everyone's moving off to 11, then isn't that where the hackers are going to focus on, and they're not going to try to exploit 10? And I think that's kind of a bit flawed logic as well.
Yeah, that'd be like, what if everybody bought new locks? Wouldn't the burglars break in there? Oh,
Yeah,
they break in where the old locks were. So
Stephanie Trapp, ASO 1447, Dog 3579, Liberty 73, all have a question along the lines of what are the hardware requirements for Windows 12 and should I wait to upgrade?
I wouldn't think so, because I think that any PC that's going to run Windows 11 will run whatever Windows 12 is. Now, you can't say that about Windows 10 and the jump to 11 because of the addition of some security requirements, but it's not like they said you need a much more powerful computer. It was you need these features for security. And presumably they're not going to get away with doing that every version of Windows.
And it's primarily TPM that they're looking at, right? Like,
yeah,
that's the big thing. So if your machine's got that, that's not like going to be some newer, better version of that comes out. And now 11 is unsupported and you need no hardware to go to 12. E themselves, the Thing King. Can Windows 10 be made secure post end of life with tools like Zero Patch or extended security updates?
Well, extended security updates if Microsoft releases them, but if they don't release the code to anybody, there's no way anybody else can develop security updates for Windows for you. So no, I don't think it can be made secure by anybody else that doesn't have access to the source code.
CF Finch and Teorakis. Why doesn't Microsoft offer a paid dongle or license to keep Windows 10 secure on older systems?
Well, they are for a little while. There's an extended support license that you can buy that will give you updates for, I don't know what they're offering, 2 years, something like that. But at some point, they want to have people running the current product. To you and me, it's like, oh, what, are there only 400 million users that want to stay behind? That's such a small market. I can't even imagine servicing it. But to Microsoft, and it's probably not 400 million, but it's a large number. To Microsoft, that is going to be a small enough market that they're not going to focus on it. And they just really want you to move up to the current product.
Yeah, and I guess if you're willing to spend some money to maintain your current version, why don't you take that money, put it towards new hardware so you can have the latest version?
Well, I think sometimes you got to look at other industries too. Like I've got a Range Rover 2010, and for the last several years, if I go anywhere near the dealer, they're like, we can't even barely get parts for this thing anymore, man. We got brakes for this thing. We don't got nothing for it. You got to take this to the old car shop and all this because it's a 2010, which is 15 years old, and Windows 10 is already 10. Yeah, is it 10? It is 10 years old. So, I mean, if it was a car, you couldn't get parts for it anymore. That's the thing. So,
and that's part. I think we were talking last week or sometime about hardware. I mean, 30 years ago, it was like your computer hardware lasted about 18 months, maybe 2 years, and then you kind of had to move to the next system with 286 to 386 to 486 to Pentium.
Yeah, you could stay back one generation, so you could maybe upgrade every 36 months and still be productive. But by the time you got 2 generations behind in those days, like you're saying, your machine was so much slower than the system requirements for the current operating systems and apps that you had to upgrade. So it's not the first time it's ever happened.
My wife's running on our mid 2011 Mac, man. It still technically works.
Yeah, I've got a 2013 Mac Pro still in use here. So,
look, but it works perfectly fine. I don't want to have to spend $1,500, but if I spend $1,500, I'm probably good for another 10 years easy. So, yeah, amortize it and then I'm okay. White and Mick, Barry Rudolph, and VNE. Why is TPM 2.0 mandatory for Windows 11 when Linux can provide similar security on older hardware?
It cannot without the hardware. What they do is they allow you to not run that security. And Microsoft has made the decision that they don't want a mix of secure and insecure Windows or whatever the mix that they're actually allowing is. They want it to be more on the secure side. So they're trying to get as many people as possible onto a TPM solution. Linux can say we don't have to, but then they don't have marketing and customer perception and all that to manage in the same way.
RCC 5947, Slordmo, and Robo Verholt. Is there a way to use a TPM module via some PCIe or USB to make old PCs compliant?
I'm not the expert on this, but no, I don't think so. Yeah. I have an old motherboard that's got a TPM plugin module, and I don't think that meets the requirement. I think it has to be the newer TPM 2.0 integrated into the actual system. So,
Inaginima,
plus I should mention that, let's say you did have the ability to, hey, I got a USB key and that's my TPM, baby. I can plug that in and then your kid walks by and borrows your USB key, your machine can't boot anymore. That's the issue. So
Just one of the issues.
yeah, you probably don't want your system completely dependent on a removable dongle.
Yeah. Schmood J85 and PWall. Is Windows 11 really more secure or just more invasive with telemetry and things like recall?
Different axes. I don't see that one has anything to do with the other. So.
Yeah.
It might be both.
There you go. Crescent Fresh Songs, RJY, and Dreamer 8973. Is Linux a viable daily driver for gaming, office use, and general productivity now?
For gaming, depends on which games you like, if they're available on Steam and whether they run under Linux on Steam. For productivity, yes, if the things that you want to do are supported by apps that actually support, if you can get by with GIMP instead of Photoshop, then yes. But if you're a Photoshop user, then no, not without a lot of learning on your part. But are there apps to do most everything on Linux? Yeah. So it's a viable daily driver. It's just not the most convenient daily driver because you're going to have to change some habits, learn some new apps, find new ways to do things.
And I think it depends. I mean, certainly on the specific application and who you're interfacing with as well. I mean, if you're doing a lot of work with people or clients or others who are on Windows applications, if you're running Office Libre or something and trying to interface regularly with Excel and Word and those sorts of things, it could be a little bit challenging.
Yeah, it's a little better these days because I believe there are interchange file formats. CSV being the lowest case denominator, but then
you're losing functionality to go down and pull it back up, and that's that cross thing for me is something I don't.
Right.
If I have to deal with it, I can, but I'd really prefer not to.
Especially if you're doing macros
use it in my format, and if you're going to help me on this thing, help me under the same operating package that I'm using, because I don't want to have to muck around with it any more than I do already. So we had a bit of a audio or a video glitch there, so I took that opportunity as a time out to spruce up my wardrobe. So I've added on my companion task manager pin, so at least
there you go.
I don't have my dinner jacket on, but at least I got my task manager pin. So there we go. We're task manager pin buddies now, Dave. Jack, Riha, Myshus, and Dreamer again. What are the best Linux distributions for former Windows users? And I know you're working mostly in sort of the terminal side of Linux, but
I don't use desktop Linux that much, but from my understanding, the one I hear referenced the most often is probably Mint for Windows users, and that the experience is, it's close enough that you'll know your way around and it'll look somewhat familiar, and it's a pretty desktop. So those are kind of the main criteria, I think.
Pretty is an important criteria.
It is, matters to me.
Yep. Taki Komakis, Anagi 3744, and RJY. Does moving to Linux make sense if I only use my PC for games and basic tasks?
Yes, if the games that you want to play are supported on Linux, and that's something you got to check, with Steam and see what's available.
Yeah, I guess if you're using it for email and internet and YouTube,
why not?
Totally fine. Yep. LM Morton, Bob, Radish, and Rorschach. Can I use Windows 11 without a Microsoft account or cloud integration?
Not as far as I'm aware. I had to sign in the last time that I did the upgrade. I used my Windows account and my Microsoft account. So I set it up with my Microsoft account and then added my Windows account as a non-Microsoft user, and then continued with that. And I just hope I don't forget my Microsoft credentials or whatever. So my understanding is you can do both, but you have to at least do the one Microsoft account.
Mr. Pants, XY6DB, and Illuminique. Are there privacy-respecting ways to use Windows 11 without the bloat or cloud hooks? It sounds like no.
No, I don't think so. I'm not sure what you mean by bloat. If you mean the apps that come halfway installed and click here to get Bubble Mania or whatever. There is, what's it called? It's the enterprise license. But there's an acronym for it.
That LTSC, is that what you're talking about?
That could be it, yeah.
Or a version of
Well, that's long-term support contract or something. Maybe that is it. But there is a way to get a license that's just like Windows in a box, and it doesn't come with any of the nonsense. So.
Doesn't even come with a box, yeah.
Probably not.
Windows in a box without the box. Technician 462 and Primes Fajitas. Why doesn't Microsoft decouple the AI features and let users install them only if wanted?
I think they believe it's going to be a fundamental part of the operating system that you don't want,
Separated.
piecemeal. Yeah. They believe it's going to be so fundamental, like the browser, that it's something that should be built in. So,
And it's
but they're putting their effort
Doesn't-
now into MCP web or into MCP hooks, so other people can drive the operating system and add value that way. And I think that's going to be really fascinating, and they're probably worth an episode on its own just to explain why that's important. So,
There you
yeah,
go.
write that down.
Harry Blood, B109D, ACB Memphis. Why does Windows 11 have UI regressions like fewer taskbar options and extra right-click steps?
Make it simpler, I guess. Remove options, make it
Okay.
less complicated, simpler to maintain, fewer bugs. Not my call. I'm not necessarily defending that choice, but I imagine those are the rationales for those decisions.
And this one, again, I don't know. CF Finch and Moultrie Geek. Is Microsoft using forced obsolescence to drive hardware sales?
That's one theory.
Yeah.
But they don't benefit that much from new hardware sales unless people also happen to get a new operating system. So they can drive people to a new operating system any way they want, but they would have to charge for it. But they always kind of implicitly charge for it on new hardware. So maybe that's their incentive. I guess I haven't really overthought it that much.
Yeah.
I guess the answer would be maybe.
Yeah. And then WS Tagner, Bushmaster Flash, and S Dogo. What will happen to all the unsupported but perfectly working massive e-waste?
No, they can all run Linux.
Yeah. And I guess that's potentially one advantage between your typical PC setup and your typical, mostly typical Mac setup. I mean, my wife's Mac is one entire unit. The whole thing's not
Well,
really
you
useful.
could let it become e-waste, but are you really an eco-criminal? Or are you just going to not use it? It's hard to imagine.
Yeah. If your computer, your monitor and all that other stuff should be fine. It's just the little box with the CPU and the other stuff in it that's going. So, and it's, again, that cycle is a lot longer now than it was years ago. So,
Yeah, again, I mean, it sucks to get orphaned, but getting orphaned every decade or so is not the worst outcome that's possible, I would say, especially if you've been through the Mac ecosystem where it's like, hey, guess what? New CPUs this year, guys. And you needed this new CPU where you can't run the new software. None of the features will work unless you buy the new hardware. So, Mac users are like, what? Again, I thought it was an even numbered year, but then Windows users are like, this is an outrage. So.
And it's not, we're in an odd numbered year. So yeah, that's bad.
Yeah, that's why we haven't had to upgrade.
That's right. 10SE Tony and Drew Dastardly. Can I install Windows 11 on unsupported hardware using a bypass, like Rufus or some registry hacks or something?
Maybe.
Yeah.
You could as of a couple of months ago, but
Right.
they could tighten that up at any time. They own the operating system. So can you? Maybe. Will you always be able to? Unlikely.
Yeah. Should you? You make your own call on that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Your mileage may vary.
Not a guarantee. Rapture Ready. How long can I keep using Microsoft Office 365 if I don't upgrade to Windows 11?
Don't know. That's going to be a Microsoft policy decision, I imagine. It should technically work forever, but of course they may decide at some point to stop supporting that scenario.
And then the last one here from that first chunk that from the Windows 10 is dead. Closer Win 986 and ABCR1CU. Since you're going, what are the functional differences between Windows 10 Pro and the LTSC? And I'm not sure that you're familiar enough with those to.
I am not enough to give you a good distinctive answer
Okay.
or distinguishing answer.
So now we're going to go to a couple of the other Dave's Garage episodes in our last Task Manager one, or last Shop Talk one, which was titled about Task Manager. And so we've got the top 20 most interesting topics and a couple questions on each one. So I'll try and dive through those 20 and pick one question. So the first topic that Grok delivered to me was Task Manager functionality and features. So the question here from Dan20Q, who designates a PID, the process IDs in Task Manager, and when does a process get an ID assigned and by who? By Microsoft?
Yeah, by the kernel. So the kernel just picks the next, it starts with 1 or 0 probably, and increments by 1 every time. And there may be other context encoded in the PID, but not that I'm aware of. They start pretty low, and by the time your system's been running for weeks, they can be pretty large because they're not generally recycled. They could be recycled, so your program can't assume that they're always unique, I don't think. But I actually have not looked into the semantics of your process ID's uniqueness. But the short answer to the question is the kernel. It just picks the next highest number up on the list, hands that out, and it is assigned at process creation time when the process is born.
Topic number 2, Windows file systems, NTFS, WinFS, REFS, etc. So the question here, Magnus87, will we ever have a worthy successor to NTFS?
Only if you need some features that NTFS doesn't support. It's, people ask, well, can we ever get ext4 support on Windows? I'm like, maybe. But what do you need it for? Well, because I want it.
It's pretty.
Yeah. You can already get it, through WSL2. You can use ext4 to your heart's content all day long. You just can't use it on the Windows side. People say, but I want it. I'm like, but why do you want it?
And then Bruno BF00 says, do you know if REFS derives in any way from WinFS? Do you know anything about REFS?
Very little, and I don't know its lineage. It came out at long after I left, and it was sort of a surprise to me when it arrived, and I haven't had a need to use it. So all those things conspired to make me rather ignorant of REFS.
Okay, number 3 here, Windows search functionality. It says users frequently criticize the poor performance of Windows search and compare it to older versions of third-party tools. And to that extent there, Miney00, a fresh installed everything search is faster than a fully indexed Windows search. That's more of a statement, I guess. So BeReal 10EC, can you explain why current Windows search function is so useless?
I find it works, but it doesn't work well across non-standard namespaces. So if you move your OneDrive, or if your email is Google, or if you have a different scenario than all Microsoft Surface at all times in the default locations, then I think it works pretty well. Does it work better than any third-party solution? No, but that kind of is the reason for third-party solutions to exist. I agree, though, that once anything changes, the process can be pretty frustrating, and I wish it was much better than it was. But you have to give them some leeway for being able to search across domains like pictures and email and these various formats, text and documents. It's not a trivial problem, but I'm surprised that with current hardware that it's not lightning fast. I haven't tried to solve it, so it's easy for me to say, but it's like, if they could make it work 20 years ago, why doesn't it work way better today?
Yeah, the types and volume of files is growing tremendously, but so is the computing power. You'd think the two were more aligned, or one could just sort of outpace the other, catch up, but it seems like it's the volume and complexity of files that's beating out the computing capacity to try and index and sort them. And again, AI stuff in that. Can we not? Yeah, it'll get there.
I'm sure it will.
We're just upside down.
Not there yet,
now.
that's for sure.
Yeah. So WinFS history and potential. That's the 4th sort of topic they got here. Exploring the ambitious WinFS project, its failures, and whether goals could be realized. McWolfbeast, WinFS was ahead of its time, but why isn't Microsoft doing it now?
I think you can get the same work done, or 95% of the same amount of features and functionality, by just having metadata tagging on the file system level. And that's something NTFS can do, and ext4 can do. All of these file systems can have metadata associated with files. And that gets you most of the database functionality that you actually need, except for some complex queries that maybe we'll use AI for to solve instead of relational databases. So
it's certainly the tag stuff. I've got a particular problem at work now, and I want to attach tags to files, but I've got like a database and I want to dump it in there. And the only way that I seem to be able to do that is through some third-party tool. I was kind of hoping there was a direct way to do it, but I can't find one. But maybe that'll come.
Well, if you're on NTFS, you can write it to an alternate NTFS stream. So if you have a file called readme.txt, readme.txt:1 is a completely different file with the same name, and it will follow it around with it. Because when I had to write code in Windows, if you copy one of those files off to like a floppy disk, it can't maintain that anymore because it's not NTFS. And so it will warn you that you're copying data off of an NTFS volume. You're going to lose some of the alternate streams. But if you're just keeping it on your disk, you're fine. That
inserts that attribute word as a tag to that file then? It's
an alternate stream that you can put a tag in.
Oh, I see. Okay. I might have to poke that. That might be part of what my solution is. And I don't have to do it. I really want to, but Jay Shell. I remember an earlier ambition from the Windows Cairo era called OFS. Was WinFS a second attempt at that, or?
Yeah, I would tend to say so, but I don't actually know what the connection between OFS and WinFS is. I worked on the shell a bit for OFS, and we built a querier for the shell. And then WinFS came along, and I kind of assumed they were always related, but that's completely an assumption on my part.
Okay. This one, number 5, alternative file systems. Again, Lorenzo 42P. I'm running ZFS on Linux, not a problem in more than a decade. And Gavin Mitchell says, Plan 9's file systems, Fossil and Venti already did all of this way back in 2002. So folks seem to be some big fans of ZFS. Yeah. BEFS, Plan 9. You familiar with Plan 9 or?
No.
Okay. Yep. There you go.
I use ZFS all the time. I use it on my NAS, but not familiar with Plan 9.
Ooh,
it's probably from outer space.
Yeah. Oh, that's why. Right. Yeah. Topic number 6, Microsoft's development decisions. Unsigned long. Why do you think that Microsoft removes support for inline assembly on the ARM and x64 processors?
Just to spite you. I don't know.
It's because he put 2 longs in his name. If he had just gone with unsigned _long, it probably would okay, but he went _long, and they're like, screw you.
Too many unlongs.
Yeah.
Too many U-longs. Yeah, I don't know the answer. I don't know why they would remove inline assembly support. It seems like something you might occasionally want, so don't know.
And then Lorp P. Florin. Why wasn't a kernel mode driver implemented for task management?
Didn't need one.
Okay. There. Next question.
Yeah, giving all the information I needed from the operating system through kernel APIs that were, had user endpoints exposed, like anti-query system process information or anti-query information, anti-query process information, all of those things.
Historical Microsoft projects, Cairo, Longhorn, all that stuff. R7 Boat Guy. Wasn't NFS, here it goes, related to the Cairo object file system. Oh, object file system. That's what the OFS was. Yeah. From the mid-90s again. You assumed it was.
We don't know.
Yeah.
Might be.
Killer Pixel 2003. WinFS, Vista. It seems a lot of Microsoft initiatives that failed over the past year stem from being too resource hungry.
Yeah, I think sometimes Microsoft has the tendency to say, we're going to build an amazing technology and then other people can solve user problems with it. So instead of saying we need these 4 user scenarios to work, they say we're going to build this huge architecture and this complete solution for all the things you could possibly do because we're the vendor. And then it gets too complicated and it runs away from them. So, if you said, I'm going to embed an Excel document into Word, man, there's a lot of ways that are easier to do it than OLA. But OLA allows you to embed anything into anything, but it's a much more complicated problem.
How do you know that?
I read it in a book.
You almost wrote the book on that, didn't you?
No, I tried to read a book on it once and got confused by it. So
I thought that was one of the things you were working on was the OLA stuff to get Excel to actually.
Yeah, I worked on OLA.
Yeah. Not unfamiliar territory. Topic number 8, file system, metadata, and organization. Barry Ole, why not have more than one colored pointer to a file?
What do you mean by pointer color? Sorry, that might be newer than my CS degree.
Why not have more than one colored pointer to a file? Not sure. That's just
we can have links, symbolic links seem to accomplish.
That's what ChatGPT or Grok spit out to me. I just read them. I don't like them.
All right then.
And if you're talking about color, I can think of one reason why that wouldn't help because it doesn't. High Tech Geek. I want to sort on an infinite number of tags or parameters. Help. Again, that.
You are a very rare case, I think.
Infinite number or just many? Yeah.
Even many. You might need specialized software.
Okay, there you go. Third party. AI and automation and computing. TG9754. Is it possible to get a list of all the different AI projects? I'm assuming the ones that you're working on, maybe? You're only really working on one.
I don't know. Yeah, really. For me, it's just Tempest. If you mean like all of the big ones, I would go to Olama and go to the models page. So go to olama.com, go to the models page, and you'll see a list of what's the newest, a list of what's popular. Is it an all-inclusive canonical list? No, but it's probably the ones that are important that you need to know about.
That's what they're looking for, that Olama list then. Yep.
Okay.
Chris on 5BT, why doesn't Microsoft provide an API to Copilot so application developers can auto-generate metadata for files? Sorry.
Well, sir, I believe with the MCP stuff, you'll be able to, or you won't need to, because you'll be able to do what you need to do through verbs and actions and so on without having to rely on metadata. We won't know for a little while what hooks they expose, I guess, but it sounds like they're going with an industry standard. You know, they haven't decided, let's invent our own standard this time. And Google is also using MCP, so that's also nice.
So, and on and then, so this sort of open sourcing of the WSL and this Copilot stuff, any idea, again, you don't know, but what's, that seems like quite a different tact for Microsoft.
Well, the Linux is it's embrace, extend, and then extinguish, but I doubt it. You know, Linux is far too big to extinguish. So I think it's really just embrace and extend at this point, add value and do it the best on the Windows platform. Make Microsoft Windows the best place to use Linux.
Right. So here's
which I think in large ways it already is. So
here's some more access for you folks to help actually make a
it
better
even
product,
better.
And it helps us. So, yeah. It's not completely benevolent, but hopefully it serves us all better in the end. Windows Registry. Mahmoud Nadaran. Would you please tell us the story of the Win Registry and how it evolved?
I will. That's a full episode, though.
Okay. And it's on the list.
It's on my to-do list, yes.
Okay. Sean Condon. Whose idea was it to incorporate a glorified, antiquated, hierarchical database into Windows as the registry?
Probably the NT guys, John Vert, those guys.
John Vert? Yeah. Blue screen of death, but his name means green. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, your alternative is to say, whose idea would it be to scatter random INI files around the entire file system where you don't even know where they live and can't find them, and there's not per user stuff, and that's crazy talk. And that's how Linux does it, and it works just fine. So, you know, there's compromises and benefits to both approaches, and that will be the focus of an important episode of Dave's Garage.
And if it's working and it's not causing a lot of trouble, then you don't spend a lot of time fixing it. You move forward and get new things, new and better. Yeah. BOS and its file system BEFS. Bob of Zoid. What do you know about the BE operating system? It had an underlying database about 1996.
Yeah, I was going to say that's got to be 95, 96. I remember reading about BOS. The problem that I remember was the hardware, if I remember, the spec kept changing. Like, you need this much to run it, and then you need this much to run it. And so the B box was going to be this moving target. But I really don't. It's got to be maybe the Internet Anarchist or Nostalgia Nerd. Wonder if they've done something on the BOS. That was where I would look first. But
so this other question then that came in, Jason Kenny says, I wonder why Microsoft didn't just license what BE made from Palm back then. So is that BE operating system related to like the Palm Pilot? Is that?
I don't know. They got acquired by somebody eventually. So, you know, somebody bought everybody at some point.
Yeah. And if they haven't been, then they're waiting to be bought by the next guy. Performance issues in Windows. Integer of Doom 69. Have you seen how responsive the modern task manager is? Feels like early 2000s dial-up. Have you noticed?
I have not. I mean, I
haven't heard the sound. You know, I'm pretty attuned to that modem sound, but that's prior to 2000, I guess.
Well, here's a tip. If you're a real fan of the old Windows Task Manager, it still works and it does everything it did. So call it B Manager and copy it from your XP CD onto your current CD or onto your current installation. Use it to your heart's content. I won't tell anybody. It should be fast and snappy, and you can use it to kill the slower Task Manager if it comes up soon.
Have you noticed a response difference? Or
Task Manager is one of those things that either it will eventually come up or the system's so borked that you can't. I don't blame Task Manager for those situations, but when Task Manager can come up and it's kind of slow and ugly to use, yeah, that bothers me. I wish it was smaller and faster. But, you know, I'm not privy to everything it's now required to do and all the UI layers that are probably on top of the thing at this point and skins and
grouping topic number 13, Microsoft's hardware optimization. Killer Pixel 2003. Do you think that because of a build now optimize? Oh no, that's not a 8 random pretty secret. Oh, that's okay. Or maybe it's 8 random pretty secret 8. missing. The underlying technology of WinFS was ahead of its time, perhaps?
Yeah, it was ahead of the time in terms of the ability for them to deliver that on hardware. If they could have had today's hardware back then, it would be easy to hit that target then. But, now your target would move and you would have been a much more aggressive target. But because they just outstripped the ability of the hardware to keep up, I think, with that level of complexity, kind of doomed them from the start. So,
grouping number 14, file system limitations. Velzect. Is the 4 gig individual file limit in FAT32 a technical limitation?
Yes. So a file can only be so many clusters, and clusters can only be so big. And so when you multiply those together, you get some fundamental limit, which I guess with defaults is 4 gig.
Okay. And then Royce Sigurd Carlsbad.
Plus, how do you do a byte offset into a bigger than 4 gig file with 32-bit offsets is your other issue.
Yeah.
So.
How would you do that?
Yeah, man. That's as big as the number goes.
Numbers
Can't
don't
say
get
infinity
bigger
plus
than that.
1.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, but if you have that infinite hotel problem. Oh, no, that's a different thing. Royce Sigurd Carlsbad. NTFS was always prompted as efficient, but a lot seems very similar to FAT32.
No, FAT32 is good for small little files, and
Right.
NTFS is much bigger, much better for larger files. And so if you were doing tons of little files, go FAT32. But once you're doing larger files, NTFS is your friend. It's also journaled and much more robust and won't lose your data. And
That's a good attribute, good feature.
yeah.
Yeah. Desktop and file management practices. Sort of habits and frustration with desktop clutter. I think that whole old desktop folder and various versions, that was kind of funny. Yeah, so again, just a couple of stages. I've never saved on my desktop. It drives me mad when I see people with the entire desktop full of icons. That's Necronom and then Zardwark. And what exactly is wrong with old desktop? I have them going back for decades. It's like,
Exactly.
or my point
If it
exactly.
works and you keep your files, then it works for you.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Whatever
doesn't mean
works
there
for you.
can't be a better way, but
Yeah, and stop telling other people that they have to do it your way and they can't do it their way. Yeah,
Right.
It's my desktop. I'll do what I want with it. That's why it's my desktop. Windows Start menu and UI design stuff. DL Mac. Why does the Windows Start menu list nothing you really need?
I don't know. Because Bubble Mania is important, damn it. You must know about Bubble Mania. Look, man, if I were king, the start menu would be different, but I'm not king. So.
The Gimpy Times 2020. A team of 100 program managers worked on this feature/bug. Don't they know better? Not sure what that is. Other operating systems, file systems. Topic number 17. Peter Richards and You're Not. Have you ever heard of PIC OS? The file system is the database. The file system in the database is the operating system.
I have not.
Not heard
I
of
have
PIC
not.
OS? Okay, there you go.
No.
And then Matthew 22:14. Why can't they just add ext4 support to NT?
Just to spite you. They're holding it back. They know you want it.
Yeah.
They're not going to give it to you.
Back off, Matthew. It's not happening. Yeah. This is one of your favorite topics here because you know everything about Microsoft's business practices.
And ask me why they chose to do it this way.
Okay, so Casper, BJ6PO, why do Microsoft reinstall Candy Crush with every update?
Because they make money if you buy Candy Crush. So just give in and buy Candy Crush already.
And keep chewing the candy. Justin
Yeah, and get
Emily.
a couple extra candy packs to go with it. That's what they really want.
Oh, there you go. So
Make
Justin
Edge your
Emily.
default browser.
Yeah, Edge all the way. Yep.
Yeah.
Justin Emily, why isn't Microsoft bought tree size and given Windows decent search behavior? They haven't bought some other third-party search and done it.
Yeah, maybe if there was one that was really dominant, they might have to do so, but it doesn't sound like anybody has really taken that world by storm.
Or one that you
They're
had
good
made on the
products in
side
it,
while
but-
you were an intern and then they decided to adopt it into the model?
Yeah, I didn't think of that one. Actually, I did. Lotus Magellan, before I came to Microsoft, was a DOS product that was awesome. I used it the summer I was an intern before I was at Microsoft. And I'm pretty sure it was Lotus.
That's
And,
like a
you know, you can-
precursor to Lotus Notes sort of thing then, or?
I don't know. I never use Notes, so I don't
Yeah.
know what Notes is.
Yeah.
It's like email, I guess. But
So what was Magellan then, and what did it do for you?
it would search or would index your entire computer, and then you could like Google search it
Wow.
really quickly.
And this
it
is
came back with
1990.
91, 92.
Wow. There you go. Historical computing stuff. The IBM Stretch, Intelligent, Philosophizer. Oh, I like that. This sounds like an echo of the IBM Stretch. Grand vision not fully realized. Not sure what he was. That was. I'm not sure where that came from. And Grand Deroshan, have you ever done a deep dive into the Talligent project? You know what Talligent
No,
is?
I have not.
Okay. Write it down, research it, find out what it is. Woohoo! And topic number 20, according to the Grok grouping here. And I think this is, it was like that they put this last. This is a great way to end. The last couple questions here, Dave, from this round. Personal anecdotes and creator engagement is the topic. So users share their personal stories or ask the creator, Dave, about his experiences or future content.
All right.
Bird 203, Dave, do you remember the weirdest phone call working at Microsoft that you ever had?
No, but I did get a couple calls where it was like, "Hey, Dave, this is Brian. We talked 3 months ago about your investment strategies." And what would happen is guys would come in, they'd steal the phone book out of the mailroom and then go through and just cold call everybody and pretend to have been a prior client. Because why else would you cold call somebody at Microsoft if you hadn't spoken to them before? So they would just call and say, "Oh, yeah, we talked a while ago." I'm like, "No, we didn't." So eventually I would like get frustrated and I'd say, "Oh, yeah, just hang on. I'm just getting out of a meeting. Can you hang on?" And I'd put them on hold and let them burn.
Last question here is going to go to Irene Smith. This sounds like a problem. Maybe we shouldn't end on this one. Control, Shift, and Escape doesn't work on my system. I bought my first computer in 1982.
Yeah, it might be pre-task manager then.
So Control, Shift, so Task Manager was in Windows 3.1?
No, it was in NT4 and later.
Oh, NT is when it started. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So if she's still on her machine from 82 and running anything pre-NT, Control, Shift, Escape ain't going to cut it.
No, there was a task list, I think, in Windows, so you could control delete or something. I don't remember these days.
But not Control, Shift, Escape, though.
No.
That's the Dave code. Yeah. So, yeah, we didn't have a shop talk last week, so sorry for those who missed out on the week. And we probably won't have one next week because...
Yeah, I'm out of town last weekend, next week. So
Mr. and Mrs. Dave have an anniversary to celebrate. So,
coming right up.
yeah,
So.
excellent. And, tell them about this channel. You have another channel, Dave's Garage or something?
Dave's Garage, yeah. We're at 996,000 subscribers. So go find 4,000 friends to sign up in the next couple of hours, and then I'll be done.
Then you can semi-retire again.
But in the meantime, make sure you're subscribed to Dave's Attic because not many people are subscribed, like 40,000 people. So only 960,000 left to go on this channel. And you can see where I'm spending my time right here. So give us a subscription. That's all I can say. Share it with a friend. But in the meantime, and in between time, thanks for joining us out here in the shop. And we'll see you next time right here in Shop Talk. This little chair will be waiting for one of you. And a rocking chair for another who likes to rock. And a big armchair for two to curl up in. All next time on Dave's Garage.